Well, it's certainly never a dull moment when you own your own RV. One of the things that we found out with the Hymer Aktiv is that the inverter is not up to code. A gentleman by the name of Sam inside of our Facebook forum group has discovered this issue. He actually brought it up to Hymer and we really got nowhere with the company. So we took it upon ourselves to go ahead and get it fixed by having this Hymer meetup group out in the middle of the desert. Sam came out there and graciously gave up his time to show everybody how to fix it. He also fixed all of the RVs himself while he was at the meetup. But this video is for those who couldn't join the meetup and want to fix the inverter issue on their own.
Good morning, Amber. How are you
Sam,
today?
how are you?
I'm great.
What are you doing in there?
Well, right this second, I'm taking out a few screws, and then we're going to remove your inverter. Your inverter has 4 screws. This is the second one I found with 4 screws.
Is that good or bad?
We found some with no screws that hold it down.
What?
And then some with 1, and yours is a 4, which is very special.
I like special.
You are very special.
Thank you.
We take off this black cap. Took off the plastic covers. Undoing these lugs. The batteries are all turned off, but the solar can still make some electricity, so you can still get some sparks. And also, if you have the AGM, there's no turning them off, so it's always here. Now this vehicle has this ground wire. Not all of them do. Some don't. I don't know where that ground wire is going to. But anyway, and so I'll undo both of these.
Okay.
And then I'll, just to make me feel good in case somebody comes and turns electricity on, I have this little plastic pipe and I slide it over the line so that it can't touch something in case somehow magically electricity shows back up again.
That's a nice, safe feature.
Got the 4 screws loose. Got these 2 off. Now this is important. I unhooked this wire, which, by the way, as we look here and put it back together, there's 2 holes that wire will fit into. It goes in the top one.
Okay.
But right now there's a wire way back here that's not very long. And so if I pull this too far, I'll break that wire.
Okay.
So I'm going to stop right here and I'm going to undo this nut, this bolt, and get that loose. And then we'll have one whole side free. By the way, yours is put together a very strange way. The positive cable is wrapped around other pieces. I'm not really sure how they did that. But also I notice I can see the ground right now.
The ground?
Yeah, I'm looking at the ground under the vehicle.
What?
Yep.
So wait, there's a big hole?
Well, it's not big, but an ant army could come up here.
Can you put this over there to show it?
Okay. So what we're looking for is light. And so this right here is daylight shining through there. And I can move the cable around, the daylight shifts with the daylight. So there's quite a large area there that we need to caulk up. So we're going to have to try yours from the bottom. Yours is a nice one. It has these connectors. Oh, this thing weighs a ton. So here we go. This is the real part. Everything else is just to get to here. So this cover comes off.
So Sam, why is it that we're doing all this? Why is this important?
Well, this is a shore power coming in from the outside world, and we've got a neutral line, a black line, which is the hot line, and a ground wire. And this ground wire is what grounds the entire vehicle to the campsite.
Okay.
And so it's very important that if ever there's a short in this vehicle, something lays against ground, that this wire is heavy, draws the current back to the campground, and throws a circuit breaker. Because it's 30 amp service, the code requires this wire to be 10 gauge, which is pretty heavy.
And what is it now?
Well, this one actually looks like it's either 10 or 12 gauge. I'll live with either one. Code requires 10. And 12, by the way, the bigger the number, the smaller the wire. So that's funny. So the problem is, and maybe we can see it here, is inside there is another wire. Basically, this plastic block here the one wire attaches here. On the other side, there's one wire, and this wire is way smaller. It'd be fun if we could actually read it, but the words get printed about every foot, and so some units I find it. But this wire is a little wire. It's 18 gauge, and it goes from here to here through another piece, but it goes from here to here. And that's just, this wire gets over 300 degrees if 30 amps goes through it, and so the chances of it failing, it's well above its failure temperature, failing is high in the very time that you need it to be good, because if it's got that much current flow through, that means there's a short someplace and it's doing its job. It turns out that the owner's manual, the installation manual that comes with this inverter, suggests that you actually put a ground between these two pieces if you want there to be a ground, and we want there to be a ground.
That's quite interesting that it would suggest that, but yet it didn't have one.
Yeah, this is a theme sometimes with those problems we found. So I just stuck the wire in there. By the way, put the wire on top. This wire is thinner. This actually is a 12 gauge wiring now, see, because this is 10 gauge.
Yep.
So that breaks code, but I'm not fussing about it. But I put this one on top because these connectors do better. And it's a solid wire because this kind of connector does very poorly with stranded wire. It won't do the job, so I'm just tightening it down.
So the green wire that you're just installing right there is new wire.
New wire.
10?
It's 10 gauge wire.
Okay.
And so now it's quite simple what happened. Now shore power comes here, it goes to here, straight over to here, and out to your fuse box. And now your fuse box is grounded with the proper gauge wire. And if there's ever something happening, instead of the vehicle becoming electrified where I get a shock by touching this, instead it goes to the ground and shunts everything off.
Nice.
So it's a very easy fix.
Definitely.
I will check these because I found them loose on another vehicle.
So those are just the screws you're tightening up.
I'm just checking, yeah.
Yep.
Wonderful. And back goes the cover.
And that's really it, right?
That is.
And then you just have to install it again.
By the way, notice the two circuit breakers. Every now and then, people have had those go for reasons we're not quite sure about. Why? You can reach in the side in the cabinet and just push that. It pops out when it's bad. When it's
Okay.
flipped.
The other thing that I don't understand why they did is they installed this where the readout, the display that's right there, is
yeah.
facing the opposite direction, so you can't read it very easily when you open the cabinet.
It's true. I think their consideration was the cables underneath the vehicle are very heavy and hard to route. And I'm guessing they just wanted to have those cables came up on this side, and so you go, well, there you go.
Alright, so cover's installed again.
So now there's one other thing. Grounds inside the box are still wrong, and so the box is now the vehicle is well grounded, but the box is not well grounded because the wire inside is too small. And so we're going to make sure that if you look, this is nice and painted and doesn't make as good a connection as it could for this ground hookup. So if we get this ground really solid and we're comfortable with it, then that makes up for the other bad ground inside. And the last piece, and this is actually pretty important and required by code, is the wire that hooks on here is 6 gauge. Remember, the smaller the number, the bigger the wire. So it's heavier than the screwdriver. And when it bolts here, it's very easy for it to turn and loosen up the bolt. About half of the units I find, this bolt has come loose. Because when you're putting it in, that thing takes a twist and undoes the wire. And so I add this washer here, which bites into the metal, makes a good electrical connection, and also makes it much harder. This paint is so slick that it's easy for that cable to turn,
Makes
and
sense.
now it doesn't. So a washer and a wire, piece of cake.
Love it.
Now we got to put it back together again.
There's a lot of people that might wonder what makes you an expert on something like this. Or what makes you so knowledgeable, however you want to put it. But you found this. You obviously have some knowledge about this.
I am not an RV expert, but it turns out that I am an expert in the area of aircraft cabins. I have been putting equipment in aircraft cabin for a lot of years. I was the chief engineer at Zodiac Aerospace in California. And so if you ever notice, when you're in a cabin of an aircraft, you have USB, you have 120 volt to plug in your laptop, you have all this equipment around there, and it all has the exact same issues as does this cabin. I was very familiar with the safety side of that. In my final years, because it was fun, frankly, I was the guy who did investigations of incidences that happened on aircraft involving smoke and fire. And so, very familiar with all that. The gauge of wire in the aircraft, we're very careful to always use the bare minimum wire because we don't want to add extra weight. And so I often am very mindful of how thin can I make a wire and have it still be safe. And so when I saw this originally, it was frankly quite immediately apparent that it was wrong. For 30 amps to find this 18 gauge wire.
Excuse me just one second. What was that you just put on?
So this is no-locks. Case is, I believe, aluminum. And aluminum is not that great for electrical connections. And so this is actually a material that is conductive. I put it on the aluminum case. It stops the piece where I just sanded from rusting or corroding.
Oh, okay.
And then it makes this washer do all the better to make the connection permanent. So put these wires back on. I put the little one on top and the big one. Here's the big 6 gauge wire. And then the washer. But it turns out that this kind of stuff, once you find the problem, maybe spotting it, maybe that was me. But I purchased the standard that this box is built to, and it follows a UL standard, UL 458, and I bought UL 458. My wife freaks out because I spent a few $1,000s on these things, but without anyone believing me, I had to go prove it. And so it very plainly states that the wire needs to be the correct wire for the service, which is a table, and it says 30 amp service, 10 gauge wire. This cable is too long, and I don't know if I can. Actually, maybe I need to try to fix it now. Why can't I push it down is the question, but it's way up too high.
All right, so what's going on down there,
Sam?
Sam?
We go. Yeah, let me have your camera a second. I'll show you. There's a problem down here. Yeah. There we go. I can get this way. So the problem here is this cable is very long for some reason. I guess it must be tight somewhere else, but this cable's hanging way down here, and it's still, there's way too much cable in the cabin, so I can't get the inverter to sit correctly. The cable is very bent inside.
That's the main 12-volt trunk power cable up to the inverter.
So I'm loosening up this cable, connect clamp here, and I'm going to push the cable forward to get it out of here. But I need to pull about 3 inches down here first.
So it rubs on the rear axle?
Well, it's very close. But I can't really get the inverter back in again. It's supposed to come straight up to the inverter. The cable is so strong. I need to push it down more. I use ground wire here. So now we're good. And so that one. Now the trick is, does this one make it now? Oh, it's much closer. Putting these nuts back on now. This cable now has been rerouted so that it lines up with the inverter. So that's good. We can definitely, I have some caulk and a caulk gun, so we'll go down underneath and caulk the hole back up again. Two nuts. This wire back in the top hole. And if it's in the bottom hole, it doesn't seem to break anything, but the remote, the inverter won't turn on. The remote piece doesn't work. Some people find their inverter's not working, and that's why. Just simply that. Back on with the black cover. And the black nut. And I put the black one on first so that I'm tightening this one up in case I happen to put my wrench down here. it doesn't make a short circuit. Lots of sparks flying. Now this is an eco-check system, so everything's turned off, but the ATMs never turn off. And so now the red cover.
Okay, so you're turning this back on now.
I got the battery on, turned the cabin on. Now the inverter's on. You don't have a microwave, so I'm not gonna hear a beep.
No. You should have heard it beep down here. I always hear like something happen down here.
But it's turned on. So it's battery first.
Battery first. Reset. And then this.
And then that. And two things will happen. This will light up so you know it's working.
Yep.
And you'll get voltage. You'll go, okay, that's good. And now if you want the inverter, when you turn the inverter on, you turn the inverter on.
Okay, so let's turn the inverter on. And you should see that my phone is charging now, and it is. Cool.
Cool.
It all
You're in
works.
business.
Thank